Everyone, and welcome to the Climate of Sport podcast with me, Claire Poole. It is wonderful to be back in your ear holes again for another week, and it has been a busy one. We're now 1 week into the FIFA Men's World Cup, and there is so much sport happening as well. So we've got an incredible episode for you today. I do an interview with Ellie Simmonds, who is a Paralympic swimmer and a British icon. So we'll be getting into that shortly. But first, we'll do the climate hat trick with the biggest stories of this week. So firstly, of course, how can we not start with a roundup of the first week of the World Cup? And I think it's fair to say heat and hydration breaks have dominated the headlines when it comes to the environmental angles at the tournament. So it's difficult to keep track of all the pieces, to be honest, but I did note that they are good coverage across really tier one press globally, Le Monde in France, Times in the US, BBC, Politico, Reuters, USA Today. All of the major outlets globally seem to have pieces about heat and hydration breaks. So what's actually happened so far? Because we know the hydration breaks are a little bit contentious and we're going to get into that. But when it comes to the heat, in terms of the hydration breaks actually being needed, where are things at so far? So the bigger headlines that have come through are towards the beginning of the tournament on June 12th. 22 people were treated for heat-related illnesses during the FIFA Fan Festival in Houston. So not inside a stadium, but again, it shows you even at the fan festivals outside how the heat is impacting visitors to the various host cities who are enjoying the atmosphere. The June 13th fixture between Qatar and Switzerland in the San Francisco Stadium seems to have caused fans the most discomfort. So it was reported by SF Gate that hundreds of fans ended up watching the match actually from the concourses to avoid overheating in their seats, which obviously is very ironic when it comes to the amount of seats that have been sold for the World Cup, the crazy costs that have been spoken about, and how much people have paid to get into those seats. And the irony is that because of the heat, they are actually watching the matches, standing in concourses to get away from the heat. In that particular stadium, what would be Levi Stadium at other times of the year outside of the World Cup, there is a lot of direct sunlight in that heat in that particular stadium. So it is noted that it's not ideal for fans. However, temperatures were cited around 27 Celsius or 81 Fahrenheit at around half time. So way off the FIFA mandated threshold, the wet bulb globe temperature of 32 degrees in terms of actually considering postponing or impacting the match. But it just shows you even at 27 degrees Celsius or 81 Fahrenheit, depending on the conditions inside a particular arena, that can still be uncomfortably hot for fans. So what are players experiencing? The fact that they can't even stay in their seats during that tells us something about not just what the temperature is, but what the temperature feels like for the people who are experiencing that. Then the June 15th fixture between Belgium and Egypt in Seattle was another hot one, especially because this is not a stadium in an area that we would expect to be a hotspot during the tournament. Obviously, when we talk about the heat, we often look at the east coast of the US and Mexico being the particularly concerning areas, and Canada and the west coast of the US are a lower risk. But Seattle have had a really hot period, and advisories, local press put out advisories about cooling centres that are open to the community because it was around 30 degrees Celsius or 86 Fahrenheit on the field at kickoff during that game. So already we are seeing extreme heat happening, and these heat advisories, people being taken ill at fan festivals and fans feeling so uncomfortable that they can't stay in their seats during the games. But the hydration break element is contentious, and a lot of commentators have spoken out because what people have an issue with is the fact that these hydration breaks take place no matter what the conditions inside the tournament. So even for indoor arenas or games where the temperature is mild, the hydration breaks are still happening. And a lot of quite famous people within the sporting world have spoken out about this. So Jurgen Klopp, obviously former Liverpool manager and other teams, but most recently at Liverpool Football Club, said football's being held hostage by these breaks, and football used to be the main event, but now it risks becoming a background music to an advertising show, inferring that these hydration breaks are more to do with advertising than they are player safety. And Ian Wright, again, another quite famous British football pundit and former player, echoed that sentiment in similar terms, saying it's just another way to get adverts in. There's no way Fox haven't had a say. You know, with FIFA and Fox, they've got some hand in what they want to do, he said. So we've seen a lot of coverage as well about how hydration breaks are impacting momentum of games, i.e., after a hydration break, it slows things down. And already in many matches, we've seen probably a shift in the outcome due to the hydration breaks. Some teams are dominating and having a momentum, and that has been slowed or stopped, and other teams are struggling and have time to regroup. Some teams haven't even been seen taking on hydration during the breaks, but more just talking about tactics. From our perspective, I think it's a worrying trend. It's a worrying thing of like what the legacy is going to be for this matches, because hydration breaks are now becoming synonymous with sort of a negative sentiment. They're saying they're unnecessary, saying they're slowing momentum. Pundits don't like it. And this for us more broadly is concerning because already we see athletes pushing their bodies to extremes in increasingly hot temperatures to leave it all out there on the pitch, the court, the track, and also especially in team sports where they don't want to let their teammates down. They are perhaps continuing to play even when they don't feel well. Could this sentiment from the World Cup impact us in the long term, where hydration breaks are more seen as another opportunity to bring in advertising or a more commercial lens when actually it should be about player safety? And obviously the big differentiation here is that the hydration breaks are taking place in indoor arenas, even in mild temperatures, and basically are unnecessary. But equally, in some of these hotter games, we have seen players taking on hydration and it being a great moment. But is this polarizing the whole concept? We'll have to wait to see what happens in terms of the outcome, and hopefully people can differentiate between when those hydration breaks are absolutely necessary for player safety and when perhaps governing bodies or tournament organisers are adding it in for different reasons. Far be it from us to say what the facts are there, but we hope people see that differentiation, because as part of the climate discussion and the fact this is going to happen more frequently, we do have to think about what the impact and the legacy of this tournament is going to be. What obviously would have been more ideal is that FIFA continued to have hydration breaks as they have done at previous World Cup tournaments, but lowered the temperature threshold, which is what organisations like FIFPro have asked for in the past, saying 32 degrees on the wet bulb globe temperature is too high to be the trigger. Bring that down to 26 or 28 degrees Celsius in terms of triggering hydration breaks or thinking about whether a match needs to be postponed or cancelled. But having these hydration breaks, as they have done before, on a what is necessary perspective, rather than just having a blanket reason for being no matter what the temperatures. So we'll wait and see what the legacy is. I'm sure we'll be talking about it more over the next few weeks as things as well. We're getting now towards the middle of June and then into July for some of the later stages. We are going to see the hydration breaks being more necessary. So let's see what happens on that. The second story I want to talk to you about is more of the athlete side. The next couple of stories about that. And obviously we've got an interview with Ellie Simmonds as well. So the rest of this is kind of quite athlete driven. Just because we've seen two really quite high profile examples of athletes speaking out for the environment in the last week or so. So the first one is Morten Thorsby. Morten Thorsby is friend of the pod, absolutely brilliant, as well as being a player for Cremonese and also in the Norway World Cup team. He and his family also have the We Play Green initiative, which is an incredible environmental NGO that tries to support nature and use the power of football in order to drive positive change. So Morten is someone who's been in this discussion and been an advocate for many, many years. But what was a big deal this week was that he wrote an article for VG, which is the most read online newspaper in Norway, talking about nature and saying, although he's incredibly grateful to be in the USA for the World Cup, he feels a paradox because tournaments like this cost nature a lot. Teams fly over enormous distances, he says. Supporters travel to watch matches, and we use a lot of natural resources to make short-lived World Cup products. So the idea he was trying to get across, and actually the title of the article was, it's easy for you to say, he acknowledging that many will respond by the fact that he's a rich footballer and he flies around the world. But he goes on to say, my life isn't perfect. He's never claimed that, but he feels very strongly about these issues and he wants to use his platform to raise awareness. And what's a big deal here is that Morten is a current professional athlete. He wrote this on the eve of the World Cup, which is, of course, one of the biggest moments of his career. And he still is speaking out about it. Another example in the same week, Brent Suter, who's a Major League Baseball pitcher for the LA Angels, became the first pro-US athlete to speak out against fossil fuel advertising in sports. And this, again, is a really big deal because Brent is still playing at a very high level professionally within his sport. He said something that really resonated, which was that the first guy through the wall can sometimes get bloody. And he's fully aware that being early in this space carries personal and professional risk. But he still spoke out about what he cares about. He acknowledged very eloquently the push-pull of sponsorship and making sport happen, and how, again, he isn't perfect and he's been on a journey with this, but now he feels as though he needs to say something about what's happening. And that's on ahead of some protests at the World Cup, either stadiums or cities, about fossil fuel advertising in sport. Aramco obviously being the main sponsor of the FIFA World Cup and having advertising everywhere around the tournament. So these two examples really stood out for me because what we often find is that athletes who are absolutely incredible tend to start speaking out about issues they care about when their professional career is over and they are in retirement. This is not necessarily because just they've decided, oh, now I care about things. It's more that being a professional athlete and operating at the highest levels obviously is such a huge undertaking, and it's very in-depth. It's very, in Ellie's words, actually, in the interview later on in the pod, it's a selfish space. You have to be selfish to get to the highest levels of your professional sport and succeed. So these examples of athletes speaking out, that's why this is so important, I think, to our overall movement, because now we have examples of athletes who are at the peak of their game, speaking out about these issues that they care about. And then last but not least, celebrity capital meets climate sport. So this was an interesting article, again, about a rise in the trend of athlete and celebrity engagement in sport through the lens of sustainability. So last week, the E1 Dubrovnik Electric Boat Racing Championship took place, and NBA star Kyle Kuzma, who has invested in the electric powerboat racing series, spoke out for the first time about his involvement. So this racing series highlights a broader shift in sport where we're looking at sustainability as, again, a commercial asset, not just an environmental commitment. So Kyle Kuzma is the Milwaukee Bucks forward, and he joined the Sierra Racing Club as a co-owner and global brand ambassador back in April, alongside Real Madrid goalkeeper Thibaut Courtois. His arrival adds to an already impressive roster of celebrity investors in this electric powerboat racing series. So other stars already involved include the likes of Tom Brady, LeBron James, and Rafa Nadal from the world of sport, and then also big powerhouse names like Will Smith. They're all backing this championship, and it's helped build its identity around the convergence of sport, sustainability, and this star power, which honestly, in this day and age, especially in terms of social media and the online audience, goes a really, really long way. So at the heart of E1's proposition, these all-electric racebird boats, they also do a lot of work around marine conservation initiatives, and they have a mission to accelerate cleaner waterways. The result is this platform that seems to not only appeal to fans, but also sponsors, investors, and host cities seeking alignment around these climate and ESG priorities. So Kyle spoke out at an event ahead of the Dubrovnik E1 race, saying all of us here today are trying to build a platform. Something powerful happens when you bring people together, and I'm really proud of what E1 is doing. So as well as the electrification side, the E1 series is also backed by Alejandro Agag, who people will know was one of the leading forces of Formula E in getting that going. Essentially what they're trying to do for motor boat racing on water is the same as what has happened on land with Formula E. But as well as the electrification side and the sustainability side, the championship's one of the few global sports requiring every team to field both a male and female pilot, sharing equal responsibilities throughout the weekend. So again, for gender equality and a reshaping of some of the expectations of sport, some of the norms, they are shifting that as well. They are showing that bringing sustainability into a sport can also be commercially viable in terms of its sustainability narrative, and it's putting environmental purpose, technology, innovation, and that celebrity influence to combine all of these things together to drive that growth. So Kuzma's investment and his backing of the sport is the latest sign-off that climate-conscious sport is emerging as an attractive asset class, and that's got to be good news. So the big three stories of the week, we have the rundown of the first week of the World Cup, mainly around heat and hydration breaks. Are they now becoming more contentious? We had Thorsby and Suter speak out for nature and against fossil fuel sponsorship. And we have Celebrity Capital meet climate sport as well. So there are 3 climate hat tricks for the week. Join me now in my conversation with Ellie Simmonds, who is just a fantastic person, an amazing ocean advocate, as well as many other things, and a really lovely chat with her. You'll enjoy that now. And also, just as a heads up, Brent Suter, who we mentioned in the Climate Hat-Trick, is going to be on the pod in a few weeks as well. So we'll be able to hear more from him about the stance he's taken on fossil fuel advertising as well. London Climate Action Week is next week. So we'll be coming next week and the week after with updates around that. And we'll put a link in the show notes as well for all the sport-related events that are going on. If you are in London and you wish to join us, it will be lovely to see you there. Right, that's it from us this week. You take care, enjoy the interview, and we'll speak soon.